Oh, there it is. Perfect time, Mr. Ryan. Hey, ready? I'm ready, yeah. Take it away, timer's gone. Okay, well, hello, my name is Scott, I'm a member here. And various interests, but tonight I'm gonna do a presentation on cracking cheap fire safes, which if I can get to my team camera here. This is an example of what I'm talking about. Oh, saying that maybe. One second. Okay, so I could just get to the base. Yeah, I could pin it all in. Yeah. So this is an example of a cheap fire safe you might get, and it's designed for storing documents, you know, so they don't burn up. It has the appearance of sort of being physically secure as well, but that really isn't the case. There you go, Scott. All right, perfect. So just to give you a sense of how this works, there's a dial here with 100 numbers. And when you manipulate this dial, it turns this front disc here directly. And then there are little bumps out on the back of this disc that when you turn it enough, it'll pick up the second disc. You can see this slot here on the second disc turning now, and if you keep turning it enough, it'll pick up the third disc. And so by a series of manipulations, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise, you can get the slot in each disc, get the slots to line up, and then the safe. These bolts that you see go into the side, so you can't just cut the hinges. There's bolts on there. There's this lever on the front that tries to pull this fence in through the slots of the disc, and when the slots aren't lined up, it won't open, and when all three are lined up, it'll open. So I want to just give you a sense of, you know, I'm going to take off the disc and pass them around, so that'll give you a good sense of, better sense of what I'm talking. After this, the safe will never work again. Yeah.
A cheap safe, like how much does a safe like this cost?
$250.
That cheap?
It's cheap. It's a cheap safe. We're gonna get it back together so that it works again. So I've got these labeled. This is what I'll call this wheel free during my presentation. That if it's in two parts, so you can in theory change the wheel free number, wheel 2, wheel 1. So you'll notice the bumps on the front. That's how they feel. So why are we talking about this? Goes back to EJ, and I think EJ's wife works at Goodwill or something, and someone brought in a safe that ostensibly had a combo written on it, but that combo didn't work. And so it wasn't really worth anything to them. So via EJ, that safe showed up here. Chris sent an email to the member list. Any aspiring safe trackers? Hey, this is like we got this thing. Does somebody want to play around with it? I'm an amateur locksmith, so I like to do lock picking. That's a kind of a hobby of mine. Never have done safe cracking, but I like puzzles. So, and this is really a great puzzle. So I said, hey, that's cool. Managed to get the one that he brought in open. And then Sean, another member here, said, oh, I have a safe that I've never gotten open. I don't know if I have the comic book anymore. Can we get that open? So I delved a little more deeply, kind of cheated on the first safe because the written number on it was very close, but just in very bad handwriting. So I was able to get one number, and then knowing that number, comparing to the handwriting, I could figure out how the handwriting was bad, and then got the other two numbers from that. So this is the inside, like I showed you, with the wheels, and that shows the wheels lined up. There's the dial, the wheels, the lever on the front, the fence that goes into the slot, and then the bolts on the side of the relevant parts. There's 3 wheels on safes like this. It's a three combo safe very typically. And here you can see again that little knob that picks up one knob on one disc picks up the nub on the other disc. So we could actually, by flipping these discs, you know, back front, you could change the combo up. If you wanted to do that. So how do we open these non-destructive? Yeah, theoretically, the 100 possibilities for each disk. That adds up to 1,000,000, multiplies out to 1,000,000 total theoretical possibilities. That's going to take us forever to dial through 1,000,000. They do have machines that will dial through, but those are typically not for the safes like this. Those are for what they call group 2 safes, which open without a lever. They open by engaging a pawl on the 4th turn. There's really no, I mean, you could auto dial 1,000,000, yeah, sure, but we can do a lot better than 1,000,000. So number one is that the slots are larger than the actual resolution of the numbers. So you can immediately go every other number and the fence will fit into that slot and open. So there we go from 1,000,000 to 100 cube to 50 cube. We're down to 125,000. If you look at that first wheel, it has castellations on it. And that is so you can't just hold the fence down and spin and feel the slots. So the castellations prevent us from easily finding the slots by spinning it. But also that means that first disc, you can really readily feel the 12 potential spots where that slot could be. So now we're down to, for the third wheel, 12 possibilities. So we're at 30,000. And then we can start to get clever. And we can start to exploit manufacturing defects, in essence, to try to further reduce the search space for our proper combination. And the first thing we're going to do is go after wheel 3, and the width of the slot on wheel 3 is less than the width of the or it's different than the width of the castellation. And so by very careful measurement of holding the lever down with consistent pressure and moving back and forth within each castellation, we can measure how many numbers that castellation moves. And if we do that very precisely, typically there's going to be one that sticks out, lower or higher. And so if we do that, and so what I did is you rubber bands to one lever to get a consistent pressure on each. And some people that do this use a Vernier scale on the dial, so they can very easily get to the tenths of a rotation. I didn't do that, I just estimated the tenths, and that was sufficient for this scale for what I was doing. And so with precise measurement of that wheel, we can pretty much conclusively determine the third number. So that gets us down to 50 times 50 times 1, which is 2,500. Here's the data that I gathered when I was doing this. So I measured one extent and the other extent within each castellation. The literal number on the dial, so 93.9 or whatever. I measured each of the 12 areas, and then I calculated a gap with a simple Excel spreadsheet formula. And you can see here 29293, 323, 33, and there's one that's 2.6. And they're also, it turns out, some of the numbers, the middle of the slot was right on a number, and some of them were also like halfway. So that was further confirmation that this that 9.0, the smallest gap and right on a number, was our third number. So here's a graph of that information. It kind of sticks out. So great, we're down to 2,500, but nobody wants to do 2,500. Whoops, sorry. So let's go after wheel 2. We can get more clever. And that fence, when you pull the lever, it doesn't ride on the castellation if it's in the low part of the castellation. It rides on the wheel 2 and 3. And actually, just because of manufacturing tolerances, when you're putting pressure on that wheel, it tends to ride on wheel number 2. Which means we can go around the dial on wheel number 2, and instead of measuring how much it moves, we measure how much the lever deflects, which is measuring how In essence, this is literally measuring the diameter of wheel 2. And so by very careful measurement of the diameter of wheel 2, we can find where it is, where it goes down further. It's the start of that slot. And so we can go every other number, measure. And so what I did is I used a dial indicator. I put a little flat lever arm out on here. So I put a little flat arm on here, I put a dial indicator on that, I put a rubber band for consistent downward pressure on each one. And you go around, it's basically just following the recipe. Go around and measure the numbers, whoops. Oh, I don't have my data slide in here for that. Anyway, I did the same thing with a spreadsheet, but 0, 2, 4, 6, 8 all the way up to 98. And a couple of those numbers stood out as lower by about 10-15 thousandths of an inch. So a pretty significant amount lower. There were, there's variance in the disc, you can feel it. But so that gets us to with measuring the second disc, we are now down to 50 possible combinations on disc number 1. If we believe we're correct, 1 and 1 for the second, and that's 50. So 50 we can try manually, no problem. And so that was then the next step was to do those 50, and just the way the discs are manipulated, we could also line up slot 2 and measure the diameter of disc 3 if we cared to do that, but that actually would be the same amount of work as just literally trying all of the disc 3 combinations, because you have to pick up disc 3 with disc 2. So you're moving both disc 3 and or you have to pick up disc 1 with disc 2, you have to pick up disc 2 with disc 3. So you're moving disc 3 a lot, picking up disc 2 to move disc 1. So we might as well just try all 50 combos. And so that's what we did. And I got up to, I started at 0, 2, 4. I've hidden some of the rows in the spreadsheet here. Doesn't work. I got up to 72 and I was like, well, I don't know if I actually got either one of those other numbers right, because if you don't have it right, you don't know. But at 72.49, the safe opened up. So in a nutshell here, 27 seconds. Total time cracked without prior knowledge, about 90 minutes. I think this is a 0 skill attack. All you need is the right tools and diligence. Follow the process and get through this. You're going to get these open way faster destructively if you care to. It's literally sheet metal. You can cut through with a circular saw, or you can pry it open with a pry bar easily. But if you want to get open non-destructively, make use of the safe. Basically, there's a recipe to follow to get it. So, yeah.
What's 2 minutes? 2 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
Real quick, so if disc 2 was not made perfectly round, but instead had variations in it, would that have made your job harder?
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of ways that the manufacturer put together. In my mind, 1 hour worth of thought to make these things much more secure. There's no reason to have the manufacturing tolerances on the gaps be different. They could put cancellations on both, and that would be also fine. Like, there's no reason not. So yeah, they could easily make these with very little effort.
Since you're an expert safe cracker now, would this have changed if the safe was open and locked?
Open and locked.
If the door were open, it's vastly easier.
Yeah, if the door's open, you can literally look at the discs and get the count. That's no problem.
Okay, then never mind. I've 10 more questions after the show.
All right.
You think it's on purpose that they make it, like, is the reason they haven't made it more difficult to, like, is this a feature so that grandchildren can reuse their grandpa's safe after they die without telling them the combo?
That's a great question, because these are like $200 safes. It's not like, whatever. I just don't, I don't have a good answer. It's like they don't really care, to be honest. I mean, it's not meant to be a physical security safe. It's meant to be a fire safe, but they couldn't make it more physically secure easily if they could.
Well, that just depends on how much money you put in the game. You can buy more secure safes for more money.
Yeah, and in a way, like, that's probably it's a market differentiation.
Jacob, you're up next.
Oh,
I hope somebody swapped the wheel out, John, on you while I was.
yeah, that would be good.
Best way to go. Or not so, but.
Okay.
3D prints, yeah, perfect. Print.
Oh, yeah.
Printed
Ah,
pieces,
yeah.
and try out
Good field. Yeah, no, we're not talking about the field here. So, my story today, is about a cat litter box, like an automatic cat litter box that I found in the trash that was broken, that I fixed. And so this is the site for the manufacturer, and Leo's Loo is the brand. It's pretty cute.
This is a higher class than the safe.
Fancy.
Yeah, it's
This
pretty.
is the one that was decapitated.
I don't think so. This one, I don't think so. This is always open, so the cats are safe.
Oh, okay.
So. Anyway, this kind of gives you a good idea of how this thing works. So there's. Basically, this is the main part here. It rotates to filter out used litter from clean litter based on like the size of the clumps, I guess. So there's kind of like a mesh filter element, sort of. It's all plastic, but there's kind of a filtering thing here. So it rotates this like barrel to do that. And then the used litter goes into this bin down here. There'd be like a plastic bag in there to catch it. And there are some like infrared beam break sensors in there that detect when the used litter goes up past the top of the bin, then you need to change it, and it like shuts down at that point. So that, you know, if you let it pile up, you know, it's gonna make a mess and probably interfere with the rotation. So I think that's a legitimate design. But the problem that I was seeing with this litter box that I got is that it would always just say that the bin is full. So there seemingly was some issue with the sensor where even if there was absolutely nothing in the bin, and even if that sliding drawer was all the way out, it would say bin's full, you can't run it, and it wouldn't do its like cycle. So it makes it pretty much unusable. The kind of cool thing, which I guess I have very little faith in like modern manufacturers, but if you go to FAQ and go down to this product, my Leo's Loo keeps indicating that the waste drawer is full, but it's not. How do I fix it? They say it's likely a sensor issue, and there's a troubleshooting guide, which is just a Google Drive folder that those kind of fun.
It's another way of acknowledging that they know there's a design defect. This is the solution.
Yes, well, sort of. So, you know, they kind of show you, and this is useful for the presentation, they kind of show you the system here. This is the top of the drawer where they have the sensors, and there's one on each side, and they're both doing both transmitting and receiving. So, you know, the right one is sending signal to the left one's sending a signal to the right one, and they're both verifying that they're receiving the signals. So it could be a blockage, like if you have your litter bag in there, and that's not the case because there's no bag in there or anything. In my case, it could be dirty. I checked that's not the case either. So then you have alignment, and it says the sensor might be tilted. Sure, yeah, that makes sense. Then the other one doesn't perceive it. And then it says, so straighten it. And there's a picture which shows it being straightened, but turns out it's actually not that simple. It doesn't really tell you how to straighten it. But this was useful, so you know, I thought it was worth pointing out. So now I'm going to go to my own contents here. So kind of the first approach I had here was, well, I had done some testing and convinced myself that it did seem to be an issue with the alignment of the sensors. You know, it could have been that like one of the diodes that emitted the infrared could have been bad, or you know, something like that. But I was pretty sure I'd eliminated that and was confident it was just the angle was wrong. So my hope was that I could
find some way to like visually see in real time where the beam was landing across the gap where the sensor operates. Because you know, then it would be obvious, like, oh, I see it's like just pointed a little bit below where the receiver diode, you know, is. But it's infrared, so you can't just see it. I did, however, find this is a very blurry picture, unfortunately, but I found this infrared, it's called an IR sensor card. So it absorbs infrared light in a certain spectrum and emits visible light. So you might be able to see there's like a faint pink dot here. So that's actually visible light coming off the sensor card, where the emitter here has shown infrared light on it. So the sensor card that I got kind of does work to do this, but it's very faint here, and it's almost right up against the sensor. So when you move it to the other side where you want to see where the beam is, there's just you can't see anything. So this is basically not useful to solve this problem. I'm not sure exactly what the problem was, but this was on the back of the sensor card, so it's presumably shows, you know, which wavelengths of light the sensor card is receptive to, and kind of how much it is on all wavelengths. I don't know what the wavelength that the IR sensors use, but I kind of suspect it was something down here, more on like the visible end of the near infrared spectrum, where it doesn't have much sensitivity, so it's not going to be emitting as much light. Or it might be some combination of factors, like the signal maybe is just too diffuse, or the card approach just isn't sensitive enough for this type of thing. In any case, it didn't work, so I had to find something else to do. Just by like playing with the sensors and kind of like having them installed, but like bending on them, you know, I was able to figure out that it seemed like both of the sensors were pointed too far down. So they both kind of need to be brought up into towards the top of the space where they're detecting. And so my initial thought of how to do this was like the sensor modules are mounted just with 2 screws, one on each end here. So you can imagine putting like a shim in on one side of the screw potentially, and then when you put the screw in, it might, you know, hit the shim on one side and kind of create some torque that way. But I didn't try that. There are a couple of reasons. The sensor housing piece, this clear plastic piece, the little tabs on the sides are kind of concave, and they kind of slot over some standoffs in the white plastic piece, which is kind of the base of the where it holds the barrel. So since it kind of encloses them, it's not really possible to slip a shim in there. You'd have to put it in and get it to somehow stick there and then put the sensor thing on. And in retrospect, I don't think that would have worked anyway, because I ended up having to put quite a bit of like torque on this thing, and I don't think that would work so close to like the fulcrum. You know, the screws are kind of at the center point where I want to be rotating it. In any case, what I did end up doing, you can see here, these 3 additional screws are not part of the original thing, and I've added those. The rotation that I wanted to accomplish was, in this picture, it'd be the top part of the sensor needs to come out of the screen, and the bottom part needs to go into the screen. So the 2 screws on top, I drilled narrow holes in the sensor housing, so that when I screwed the screws in, it would basically thread the plastic, and the screws would be fixed into the clear plastic sensor piece. And then I let them, you know, I screwed them in until the point hit the white plastic piece below, and then from that point, when you screw them further, it forces the distance to increase, and it tips the part the way I want it to tip. And then conversely, on the other side with this screw, I tried it with just those 2 screws first, and I wasn't actually able to get it to sufficiently tip the sensor. So I decided I needed both sides to be playing a part here. And so for this screw, it's kind of the opposite situation, where I drilled that same narrow hole in the white plastic part underneath, and put the screw in, so it threaded that. But then a larger hole in the clear plastic sensor housing, so that the screw could freely go through. And then basically screwing that screw into the white plastic piece. Brought the two together, which, brought the bottom part in. And I kind of had this torque being applied on both sides. And kind of doing a similar thing on the other, with the sensor on the other side. I kind of have these different set screws, and so I found a way to electrically tell what the sensors are doing so that I can kind of immediately see, okay, this is working or not. And then it was just a matter of adjusting the set screws gradually, like one at a time, to see when, the sensors are forced into the right position. And that ended up working, so the thing now seems to be consistently not giving false positives on the sensor. One cool thing about when I was setting up these set screws, I had to put some slots. I'll show you here. There's some cutouts here. These are not original. I had to cut out plastic to get sort of clearance to get the screw in the far face of the sensor housing. And so Chris found this cool thing, which I think is meant to be used for sheet metal, but it like cuts out little rectangular slots out of things. It's got a little jaw, so you stick it over your. That sounds right. So I used it to nibble some holes in there. Okay, so now a bit of the electronics here. This is the PCB that goes into that sensor housing and basically implements the whole sensing system. Kind of a cool thing that they seem to have the exact same design on both sides, so they kind of made it like symmetrical and designed it so that they could just have one part that they put two of. So these are the emitters here. It's kind of cool. You can see you can kind of see the light coming out of here. So like it doesn't look like this to the naked eye, but the cameras can in some cases pick up some of the like near infrared. So you can see that it's working if you look through a camera, basically. And then these are the receivers, which they're both like basically LEDs, but for infrared. I think the only difference might be that these have some like they don't have a clear housing. They've got some sort of like dye in the housing. At least I assume that's the difference, because I think these generally work both ways. And there's some other stuff on there, but I actually drew a schematic, so it's a lot easier to see what's going on with this than with that picture. And the hope is to be able to explain basically what's happening here. So if you look at, if I go back here, there are three conductors here that are the interface, 3 pins that the connector that the thing uses to communicate. And one of them is just positive voltage, one of them is ground, and then this is like output. So this is how the sensor returns a value to the microcontroller and the rest of the 30 seconds. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, maybe I'll skip most of the explanation here, but the sensor output is basically a voltage on this second line. And so if you power the sensor just with a DC power supply and put a voltmeter up between ground and that output line, you can tell what the sensor is doing without having the device running. So this is kind of a picture of that sort of setup that I use. That's it. Since I skimmed over this, I'll leave this.
Two unanswered questions.
Does it work?
Yes, it does.
Are you selling it? Yeah, like it.
I am selling it. Yeah. It's listed for $350 because these things sell for $500. They're apparently worth quite a lot of money.
So you
Yes,
didn't have a cap and you did all this work.
that's right. Yeah, I don't know.
Really?
You don't. So
Other people do.
That's why you want when you were gonna use this.
Yeah.
Picture of it?
Would just taking those 2 sensors, if you promised yourself you were gonna clean it out regularly, could you have just taken those 2 sensors and take them together? And would that have solved the,
Oh,
for a practical cat owning,
so you're saying disable the sensor system?
no, to
You
make
could
it,
just put a voltage on the output. to the
Yeah.
input.
in other words, would there have been far simpler ways to hack this as an owner of one of these, who actually didn't care.
I-
That the scoop in, the scoop full, because you're gonna empty it.
Yeah, actually, you can just unplug the sensor and it works. But then you gotta be careful, right, that it doesn't fill up.
Not if you're selling that Craigslist, you know.
Well, you know, Chris. Yeah,
That's
So
just the way-
And I haven't tested this in a while, but it used to be that if you got a low rate cell phone with and used a selfie camera, then it didn't have the IR filter and you could see where that IR was blasting to. Did you try that at all?
no.
You can see it in this picture, that
Okay.
purple is invisible to.
Yeah.
Did you realize you
Yeah.
were gonna be able to see it when you took a picture?
On the phone, you can see it on the phone.
Oh,
Shows
no,
like a
see,
hint.
okay.
Yeah,
Shows something good.
I think I had some sense that I was gonna be able to do that, so I knew that I could use that, but the usefulness was pretty limited.
So how fine of adjustment, I mean, I'm assuming you turn the screw, is it like a quarter turn or a half a turn to?
It was more than that, I think it was like. I mean, yeah, I don't know if the screws may have been, maybe it may have been slipping as I was tightening them, but I think it was like probably more than a full turn. At least for some of them, which is kind of weird, but it seemed like it was way off somehow.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, if you have a sense of why it was broken like that? I don't know.
It's weird.
Probably just like
I mean, it's all
Really well
plastic.
right? Out of the box, it's looking out. Like your-
Yeah, I don't really understand how it would have worked out the box, but I have to assume that it does. I think this thing is reviewed fairly well. I don't know, I mean.
So you did sell it or you're selling?
I haven't sold it yet, it's
For sale,
listed.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of cat owners.
But so-
I'm just saying, you gotta market this.
But to
thing.
test it, so you had to go out and buy cat litter, right?
No, I didn't test it.
But like the,
I just thought it'd be cute, and then you're like squirting water in it to make big cats.
I'll make sure to do that.
So it's-
Get a full end-to-end test.
When you found it in the trash, do you think it was heavily used before someone threw it away? Or maybe it was always 11, like maybe it never was.
It was used, it smelled not great, so I also cleaned it, I put a lot of work into this stuff. But I don't know. how do you-
so that's why it's used.
Alright, so tonight, so normally we would have more presentations, but tonight we're gonna cut us off at 8 so that we can catch the debate. If anybody wants to stick around for the debate, you're more than welcome to. If there's nothing in the world worse to watch for you is the debate, that's all good, you can leave, it's no big deal. So I have, oops, hang on. Figure out my slides. We got everybody else prepared, but not me, but I can eat into my time.
So you make up a rule.
Oh, it's, well, I mean.
You don't want-
Hey, we didn't budget time for you to fumble around here, fella, hurry up.
No, I got the timer running, that's what I'm saying, I'm eating my time right now, I can do jokes, you know, while we're getting ready here. Thankfully, LibreOffice is maybe gonna load. No, there we go, we're good. Alright, so. A while back, we bought a Toyota Prius, this was like years back, it's probably 5-6 years ago. And it came with one key, and of course, the dealership who sold it said it just needs a battery in the key fob, it's gonna work perfect, you just gotta put a battery in it, it'll be fine. And of course, it doesn't work, you put the battery in and like, no, it's never gonna unlock that thing. So, I did of course what every Prius owner does, and you search online for like, how do you pair a new key with a Prius? And you assume like, well, just go on Amazon or eBay or whatever, buy a key, get it cut at the dealership, and then I'll follow these instructions. And pair a new key with the car. This is lovingly called the chicken dance by Prius owners, which is a legitimate way to put the car into a mode that will allow you to add keys to it, but it's completely ridiculous how to get the thing to work. And if you'll notice over here, you gotta have matching socks, and it's not gotta be a full moon over there at the right side in order for it to work. This is seemingly like ludicrous instructions, but these do actually work. Rather than doing that. My first step was to figure out what the hell kind of key I had. So there's two types of Prius keys, and of course, nobody explains this. You go online and people are talking about SCAS and non-SCAS. It's like, the hell is SCAS or non-SCAS? Smart key system, exactly. So the left thing's the smart key system. It's like a fob, and that's it, no key, like the knife edge key itself. The right side is a non-smart key, and that's what I had, was the non-smart key system. So it's a traditional blade key. course, Toyota actually is the only manufacturer that I know of that will sell you a limited license to use their diagnostic software, which is pretty crazy. So you can pay them $25, they'll give you a 2-day license to use their entire diagnostic system for all of Toyota for everything. So it's actually like super reasonable. No other manufacturers do this, which is pretty ridiculous. You do need to buy a CAN adapter. It's called a J2534 adapter cable. It's essentially a little port on the bottom of by your steering wheel over to USB. So you gotta buy one of those, which goes for any car, and then you can use their diagnostic stuff. The thing you'll notice though is that if you want to do the smart key stuff down here, you gotta pay for the security professional license. So it's $70 or $1,400 a year. And if you want a key code, you gotta pay another $20 per key code transaction, which I didn't need, but that'd be what you need. So I'm not taking questions yet, Jim. You're not taking my time. So I went on eBay, of course, to look around to see what you can find. And you can buy this adapter cable, this mini VCI cable, and it's $8.82, and it comes with a totally legitimate license for TechScreen. I mean, obviously, it's coming from a reputable eBay seller from overseas. They're going to mail you the cable and a random little tiny CD that's going to have the software on it. And then you got to go online and figure out what are the real instructions to get the crazy pirated software that you bought to actually work. So there's a forum post about that. Who's got downloads for yet another version of pirated TechScreen to get that to work. Which hopefully one of these would work. And this is, of course, 2012 is the first generation of this car. So a lot of the keys, this one is marked as for 2012, but a lot of them start in 2013 and go up. So there's like some lack of clarity of what is the right key. And of course, the key that I got with the car isn't the right key at all. They just cut the blade to be right, and they programmed the immobilizer, but nothing on the transponder was right. But I wouldn't have known that until after I started doing this. So I went on Amazon and I bought some keys. They were 19 bucks. I figured I could return them maybe. Then I started looking on eBay and they're talking about this G chip versus an H chip versus like no reference to a chip. This thing's got a G chip too. So I was trying to figure out what the hell that means. What I ended up doing is buying some keys, get the keys cut, and you can take these into a locksmith. They'll cut the keys for you. They don't care. And then they'll tell you, I may have cut this key, but I'm not going to guarantee that it works. I'm not going to guarantee anything about the fob working. I'm not going to guarantee anything about the immobilizer working or anything else. Bought the mini VCI cable on eBay, installed TechScreen, which is a fun fight with Windows. It wants to run on Windows XP. So you either need like a Windows XP license running or a virtualization environment running, something like that. So I was able to get TechScreen running. The immobilizer chip is in this key. So there's a little RFID in the key. Nothing completely unrelated from the buttons. There's a little RFID chip in here. And so that I was able to program. And I tried programming the remote, which is the key fob button things. And it didn't work. So then I went online and started looking around and trying to figure out what the hell you had to do to fix it. So there's people talking about if the chip was wrong, that G chip versus an H chip. Is the radio, there's a little radio inside of here that's like a electronic board with the little button cell on there with buttons. And then there's discussion about if you have a used key versus a new key, you might not be able to pair it with the car. And then there's also the receiver in the car, and maybe the receiver in the car won't work. So maybe you got to swap the receiver in order to put new keys with it. So there's all this conjecture, a lot of internet nonsense about what to get to work. However, in my case, I just needed another car key that would unlock the door and turn the car on. And that is all that works if you have the immobilizer working. So I punted for 4 years and said, fuck it, fine, start the key, it unlocks the door. If I ever lose the car key, I'll be able to get it to work. But I recently had a little bit of spare time, and so I started looking around again to like really like the buttons on the remote to work like a real car. So then I started looking around. And somebody online's got the guaranteed, they're a locksmith site, they sell the keys, and it was 60 bucks for the key, and I was like, you know what, at this point, paying $60, maybe just solves the problem, it'd be good. But then they said, oh, you gotta rent the programmer, and I thought, oh, maybe it's $60 for the deposit. No, they want a $200 deposit on top of the $60 rental for the programmer, and I was right back to running TechScreen. So started looking around, finally found a YouTube video of Azaloy, who showed programming a 2013 Prius C. The Prius Cs are kind of a goofball. It's a compact version of Prius, so it's like smaller. They're less common, less popular, therefore there's less online about them. But I watched this video of this guy pulling up the TechScreen, pulling up a laptop, programming the key, pushing the buttons, and the freaking thing worked, and it was fine. And I thought, if Ozzy Lowe can do it, I should be able to figure it out. So I got suspicious about, was the key actually working? Like, is the transponder working? I had batteries with it, it came with batteries, I put new batteries in. But there's no way to validate is the key actually transmitting data or not. So of course, there's kind of like Jakob was talking about the infrared receiver. There's infrared testers that are also combo testers for radio transmitters. So you buy varying degrees of fanciness ones. The $1,300 one shows you the frequency it's running on. The $88 one just gives you a light if it receives radio transmission or infrared transmissions. And I'm a super nerd, so I want to do that. So is anybody familiar with this thing? RTL, SDR? SDR means software defined radio. So what happened was there's people who sell this little box. This little box was a TV tuner chip. And the TV tuner does like a wide variety of radio frequency reception. But it turns out some nerds figured out some open source firmware for these. And so they made it so that this tuner for TV actually can receive a whole bunch of radio bandwidth. And so rather than just receiving over the air TV, you can use this little box, which is inexpensive and some software online for free. So it's about $30, and which is cheaper than my $88 solution over here. And I can receive radio transmissions. And so I wanted to check to see if I could see the transmission coming off this key in a visible way, so I could see whether it's actually working or not. Much less could I debug why the hell did the original key not work or the Amazon keys not work, like what's not working about this. So I went online, there's an FCC lookup. So all your wireless devices on Earth have a little FCC ID on the back of them. So the FCC ID for this thing is this HYQ12BDM. So that's the key transponder type that's inside of here. It's a little radio transmitter. So I looked that up, and the thing I cared about is right down here. So 312.1 megahertz or 314.35 megahertz. The FCC regulates all radio transmissions in the whole US. And so they have logs of any radio transmission device in the US that's legal has to be registered to the FCC. So you cannot, as a manufacturer, release a key or any other wireless transmitting device without registering your device to the FCC. And if you don't do that, then they can banish your stuff in the US, basically not allow import, things like that. So a lot of shit you can buy on Amazon probably shouldn't be legal because it's not actually registered. The other half of this equation then is in the car, there's a receiver. And so you can also look up the receiver, because I of course bought a spare receiver trying to debug what the hell is wrong with this thing. And this thing has this HYQ23AAC FCC ID on it. So we look that up and it has the 312.1 megahertz, 314.35 megahertz, and has another frequency, 314.98 megahertz. That third frequency is up here. It says receiver assembly, door control, and TPMS, tire pressure management system. So the 314.98 megahertz is what our tire pressure is reporting back to this receiver on in the car. So let me pull up some software real quick. Hopefully it still works. I tested it earlier, nothing like a live demo. So this is our software defined radio. It's got this little antenna right here, and we're at 314.1 megahertz. And so I've got my car key. So I push the button on my car key. Theoretically, we should see a whole bunch of noise. So we're seeing a lot of noise. We're also seeing where that peak transmission is. And if you're looking closely, you'll see that it actually moves a little bit. So actually, I think that's probably the, it might be the transmitter here warming up, but it's slightly shifted a little bit. It also can be that this box is not super precise, so don't pay too much attention to the frequency. This is my bad Amazon key. So if I hit this, you can see A, it doesn't transmit as strong, but B, it's not in the right spot. So the transmission, so this is the bad key, isn't actually at the right frequency relative to the real key. And the real key is those yellow bands, which is because it's much more powerful transmitter. So my Amazon key never worked at all. And this then allowed me to understand like why the hell made the Amazon key not work? Well, it might not work because it doesn't transmit for crap. And it's transmitting on the wrong frequency. So very long story short, since it's been 4 years since I originally bought this thing, I could now go on eBay and buy used car keys for $16 from someone else, knowing that my chip was right. And my keyblade you can buy, I can still use the cheap Amazon keyblade. Because it's a fresh key, but I need the radio transmitter, which is this little weird shaped box in there. And so you pull a little weird shaped box out, and then that I can pair with the car using TechStream, and then everything's happy. So that is the end of the saga of why the car keys don't. In short, the Amazon keys are just shitty. And I think all the reviews on Amazon are fake, because I don't think any of these would ever work.
I can't believe.
No way.
I know. I did manage with this key to get the car to unlock one time. So, like, once, but. Change a little bit.
And the car was moving at the same time.
Yeah,
Different
maybe
directions.
we got options. So I left myself 3 minutes for questions. Yes.
So real quick one that popped into my head as soon as you talked about the software, since you gotta like probably have a custom PC anyways. Is it just what, as simple as you buy a 2-day license, and you can keep changing the clock on it? Or is it going out to the internet?
No, it goes up to the internet talk. So the crack texturing software, they break the internet link.
Okay.
And then you can run it locally. It's interesting because Toyota has made zero effort to cut down on that text stream, the pirated licenses that are out there. So I don't think they care. Because there's websites that have text stream installers, you can buy them on Amazon, you can buy them on eBay, they could block all that stuff if they wanted to, I think they just don't care.
But they're not.
Yeah.
I normally gloss over this and just ignore it, but I'm gonna sink in on this one here. How much did you spend on all these accessories and keys compared to just going to Toyota and being like, just make my problem go away?
If I, oh god, the Toyota, if you go to the car dealership, I don't know, I bet somebody's done it, it's probably $300 to make you a key fob.
Well, Honda charges 2.25, yeah.
Yeah, so no, so I'm still way ahead.
Okay.
Cause the SDR I had bought, but if I didn't, it would have been $30. Even the Amazon keys were $18 for a pair of them, now we bought 2.
You're only ahead because you count your time as 0.
That's right, it's weird.
Principle of not
Yeah,
reporting the
that's
car.
reasonable here, we're on the right audience for that. Yeah,
Did you try running TextStream on like just whatever Windows system you had? Because I've got a pirated version of TextStream that runs on Windows 7, so I wonder if I got lucky.
I've got it running on Windows 10, so it's fine. You can dork with it enough to get it to work on anything, but yeah, it depends. The virtualization is actually pretty easy because it's just USB. The other thing to fully disclose is I did this stuff in college. We used to do automotive stuff in college, so a lot of this is tongue in cheek. It's just if you had to figure out how to do this, it's a huge pain in the ass, but it's not.
So this wasn't a huge pain in the ass.
No, I just does a 4-year interval, you know, it's like you forget the pain and then you want to try it again and figure it out. But yeah, the CAN bus stuff, what's cool with TextStream is that you can see literally everything on the car. It's relatively minimal risk, there's some chances that you could tell the thing to relearn, like the ECU to relearn what car it was in and things like that. You do have to delete all the keys in order to add a key. So you literally have to tell the key, forget all the keys that you know, and then we're gonna add a new key. So when you do that, there's a chance that you're gonna tell the car to forget all of the keys, and then it's just gonna forget all the keys, which could be unfortunate. But any
I
other?
haven't solved it. If Toyota owner came to you, what would you charge them?
I'm too smart for that. Come on. Like, send over to Jacob. Each game him for a $350 cat litter sifter with the program. The best look ever.
Yeah, does the cat litter thing come with the software or is that?
You can include a CD with
It
that.
doesn't need software.
Oh,
The second one is IoT, but this one is, you know.
David, you only get one question an item.
It's a real question. So you don't have key cutting, like physical key cutting capabilities in this shop?
We do, but it's much easier to take it to a locksmith shop and pay him $7 and have him cut it on a key that's dialed or a cutter that's dialed. Our cutter cuts pretty well. The problem is it's a double-sided key. And so once you cut it, now you're gripping on the edge of the thing. In a previous presentation, if you've been paying attention years ago, I cut an Audi key, which is a laser cut key. It's actually a side mill profile, and I use the Tormach to do the
nice.
CNC milling to cut out the blade profile. That was because that car only had one key. So really, you all should be telling me to stop buying cars with only one key. But yeah, I cut an aluminum key because for Audi to reprogram the car keys, you have to have one key in the door, one key in the ignition. So I use the aluminum key in the door and use the real key in the ignition, and then I could add new real keys to the ignition afterwards. So this is not my first key saga.
cars a little bit.
Sure is.
All right, so we got 1 minute before I turn on the debate, so why don't we go around and you can say who you are or what you're interested in or whatever else, and if anybody's interested in a tour, we're gonna meet by the toolboxes afterwards, so. Go ahead.
My name's Micah, first time here, coming to drop by, looking to get a tour. Interested in locksmithing, getting locks. Yeah, I'm interested in wrenching on my car here.
Hey, I'm Jacob. I like computers, electronics, cars. I don't know, saving things from the garbage, clearly. A little bit of that.
Yeah, Scott, I do safe cracking, mainly stair fabrication.
This week.
Jeff Alexander, sometimes I'll stop by and see the meetings, so I like to do electronics. Our electronic product.
Anthony Camino, under here, 3D printing, laser, microcontroller stuff. Bill, robotics, sailboats, cabinetry, and genius. Richard, I repair laptop computers.
Aaron, well, most of the Toyota, honestly. Costumes, 3D printing, props. Troublemaking. And pizza delivery.
I'm Brett, first time here, I'm interested in making things. Machining, work, so I'm hoping to get a tour, but. Yeah. I'm Chris, I'm interested in woodworking and I've got a girlfriend that is interested in making some art here. And it's my first time and I'd love a tour later.
Go back to Jeremy.
Oh, okay. I'm Jeremy. I really like embroidering my name onto shirts, and there's an embroidery machine.
I'm Mark, I'm into the preservation of 3-tab shingles these days.
Ordering the market.
My name is Davey. My two current hobbies are remodeling my attic and violently removing lathe tools from their tool holders. One of my favorite pastimes.
My name's Kate and I do a lot of vector design.
My name's Steve, it's my first time here, and I'd be interested in a tour.
My name's Jim, I have a smart car with 2 keys, but only one of them the electronics work on, so. Anybody wants to tackle that for less than Mercedes charges for a key? I'll give you that key and buy you a beer.
Can we convert the ignition into just like a safe dial? Because I think we can get Scott.
The annoying part was, the person who sold it to me. Said the following, he goes. Yeah, this key just sat in the junk drawer in the kitchen for too long. And the car forgot about it. Swear to God, apparently if you start your car more than a certain number in the hundreds with one key, not using the other key, the car decides, oh. I don't need to worry.
That sounds like Todd pulled a fast one, Jim, he pulled a Jim on Jim.
But yeah, so then, and the cost of that Mercedes is apparently insane to just repair the key to the car. And I did look into it long enough to see if you have to buy, yeah, so it's software, probably bootleg, right? To activate the program.
Hi, I'm Jamie. I took a tour here like 10 years ago. I was a student and I would come back and see it again. I like making stuff. I love it too.
I'm Reed, this is my first time touring here, interested in lock sport, 3D printing, milling, woodworking.